Right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to PR2 Week 2 catch-up classes. What I'm going to do is just a quick recap in terms of what we covered in terms of week 1, in terms of the catch-up. So we'll quickly go through that. So we've unpacked for you in terms of the definitions of public relations, right? I've broken it down. Some of the things that you're going to be learning in PR2 for this year, things like how to put together a campaign using the PRISA 7-step plan, um, writing of editorial angles, looking at media lists, social media strategy and the importance of it, and as well as the portfolio, which is going to take you approximately 5 months to complete, which is due round about, I think, October this year. Then what we unpacked is in terms of the different aspects of public relations that you can specialize in, whether it's internal communications or social media, if you can specialize in that, or investor relations, or event management. You can even go into industrial relations, etc. There's a number of key websites and newsletters that we've asked you to, we've said that it's really important as a public relations practitioner to be able to have your finger on the pulse as to know what is happening every single day, right? One of the major disruptions, and this is yesterday, that was Thursday, the 30th of March, was the massive shock to everyone with the increase of the prime lending rate of 50 basis points. Analysts were left gobsmacked because they had predicted only 25 basis points increase. That was the major thing that happened yesterday. So it's understanding things like this in terms of Donald Trump, what's been going on with him, and him going to court. These are all the things that you should know about. So it is very important. As a public relations practitioner, you need to know what is happening around you, in the country, around the world, etc. Then we also touched on marketing, advertising, and public relations. How this fits in, I even showed you a video in terms of how to differentiate all three, right? Remember the two, marketing and advertising, you would have to pay for getting coverage, etc. However, public relations is about getting editorial, right? Then we spoke about editorial angles and how critical it is and how important it is to establish those editorial angles. And then we also looked at getting to know the media, your stakeholders, and social media, right? Social media, remember what we said, something very important is that don't think you're going to pitch to a journalist over any of their social media platforms. You'll probably, in all probability, get no response from them, right? And then we spoke about, as a second year student, what is very key is not opinion-based information, but everything surrounds facts. Remember doing research, and I'm sure you got actually tired of listening to that word yesterday, but very, very important is to understand that. We also looked at, understanding how the media works and how, as a public relations practitioner, you are going to engage with this media, with the various kinds of media. Editorial coverage, we spoke about it in length, right? And also we spoke about public relations and marketing, is that in times when economically, right, an organization is not that profitable, the marketing budget may get cut, and that is where public relations will help support marketing in those areas. So public relations, radio, presenters, producers, in terms of engaging with them, We spoke about blogging and influencers, how to engage with them, right? And then we Okay, guys, we're back. Apologies for that. So with the weather that we're having this week, it's unfortunate that the connectivity, although there's no load shedding, is problematic. So I've switched on to my phone as a hotspot to connect and to see that we can just continue with this without interruption. So apologies for that. So research is something that has been covered in, I think it was week 4, week 5, week 6, one of those weeks. We go quite in depth in terms of that, right? So research is integral, and also keeping up to speed with the latest information. So if you sign up to those websites like your Biz Community or Media Update, you're going to get updates of what is happening in public relations, in what public relations agencies are doing, campaigns that are really being done well, right? And then you need to fact check in terms of journalists and editors who constantly, they do not stay in the same position all the time. So your media list that you used last year, right? Please don't use it for this year. Make sure you go and fact check and make sure that those are the correct media or journalists that you are using. Right, in terms of your future of public relations and whether you're going to go into this as your career, you will always need public relations, right, in your role, whichever role you go through, whether it's writing or speaking, you need to present, right? You'll have to have those skills. So we touched on, very importantly, is your PR2 and your summative assessment. Now, I need to re-emphasize this, is that it's going to take you 5 months to work on this in order to do this properly. So before the June, July holidays, you're going to get briefed in terms of what is required. And the portfolio is an extensive document that combines all the theory covered in Public Relations 1 and 2. It has 7 sections, and that 7 sections I actually went through with you yesterday. So if you have forgotten, perhaps go through and have a look at the video in terms of a refresher. So what we're going to do is we are now going to look at what we're going to be covering in this session. So let me just get my document. Right. So in terms of week 2, right, what we're going to be covering is different functions of public relations and different techniques of public relations. So we speak a lot about public relations and the theory, but by now you should be wondering, how do we actually do this thing called public relations? We are now starting to get to know how, and we should start to get to know the how, and you should start seeing the way we use public relations tools we have at our disposal to put together our public relations strategies. Now, the learning outcomes for this lesson is how to develop a media relations strategy, how to look after a corporate reputation, how to use the various PR tools that we have at our disposal. When we say tools, the word platform and tools are used interchangeably, so they mean the same thing. How to be a knowledgeable public relations practitioner, how to use and develop public relations techniques, how do your skills match up to those of a public relations practitioner. Now, this week 2 is linked to chapter 1 of the textbook, right? And then the slides that we will go through shortly. There's 2 videos, one on how to identify publics, and the second one is what is public relations. So what needs to be done is you need to look at the traits of public relations professionals that we have on slide 15. Are these the professional traits that you in fact have? So what we'll be doing is when we're going through the slides as I'm presenting on slide 15, right? You need to identify how many of these traits do you have and how can you work to improve your skills to ensure that you are better equipped as a public relations professional. Then we always look at the history behind what we study. So we put the theory in place and track its development. So in this class, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the history of public relations, developments in public relations, as well as learn about the local and international professional bodies that represent the public relations industries. Professional bodies speak to, for example, PRISA, the Public Relations Institute of South Africa, is a professional body in South Africa that represents the public relations industry. So once we've completed week 2, you should have the understanding of the impact of public relation and how and the impact that it has on our daily lives, how messaging in public relations is able to shape the perceptions of society, understanding green consumerism and its impact on society, the importance of public relations education, and an in-depth knowledge of the industry, right? So chapter 2 of the textbook, there's a number of links that are in this chapter that's linked to this chapter actually. So it's expectations versus reality of a career in public relations, the benefits of obtaining a certification in public relation, and how public relations is in the real world, and this is the way that it is taught. Public relations trends your brand should be dominating. Public relations daily top 6 trends for 2023. Key trends for the public relations world in 2023. Now, if you recall what I mentioned yesterday, is that each year you've got to track what are the latest trends that are in force, right? Or are very topical. So for next year, you would look at the beginning of the year, what are the 4 key trends, or even in December 2023, you can actually go online and look at what are the 4 key trends for public relations in 2024. Then something very important that we're going to cover is your formative assessment 1 briefing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the formative assessment 1 brief and discuss in detail what is required of you with this very important assignment that is your very first assignment for the year. What to read is the FA1 briefing document and in terms of the slides. So in week 3, what is covered is chapter 3 of your textbook, Public Relations and Communications. So chapter 4, Stakeholder and Reputation Management, which is very critical to ensuring that you are able to complete that specific section in your formative assessment 1. Chapter 5, Public Relations and Marketing, right? Normally what we do, and I'm going to reiterate, is that normally, so by now, right, today is Friday, you would have on core campus, right? So for this week that we have just completed, is week 6. So week 7 material, the roadmap for week 7, and the material, and it covers like all of the things that you need to read, is uploaded on Cole Campus, which means you need to then access it on the Friday, on the Saturday or the Sunday, and be prepared for the next week before you come through to class, right? So basically, that is what we are going to be covering today, right? And what we're going to do is I'm going to now just quickly stop sharing and share the document that I want to share with you. Okay, so we're going to look at the scope of public relations. Okay, so no, sorry, this is what we covered yesterday. My apologies. Okay, so while we're on here, just a refresher. Remember, we had the discussion around marketing and advertising, the confusion around it. What is propaganda? What is spin doctoring? Don't go and put out information that is not truthful, that is not transparent, because not only will you look bad, the company will also look bad. Publicity, we discussed that. Characteristics of public relations as a management function. Remember, I said it, the onus falls on us, right, in terms of ensuring that we maintain and build on the great work that our predecessors, that, you know, some of them who are still in the industry, who've managed to get public relations positioned as a management function. One of the authors of the other book that you will deal with in also PR2, strategic communications, and then your handbook of public relations, which is the book that you are using with the B's on it. So Professor Renee Bienecker, right, is one of those individuals who have had an integral part to play in getting public relations to be positioned as a management function. Okay, so what we're going to do is now let me try and get to the right presentation. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering the different functions of public relations and the different techniques of public relations. So let us continue. So when we look at media relations, right, one of the most important, excuse me, one of the most important responsibilities of an organization, or if the role that is going to be within an organization, is media relations. Now, practicing good media relations is an ongoing task and is not a last minute effort when publicity is required or when there is a crisis that is happening. Then you are going to turn to public relations and try and get that to assist the organization to navigate through that crisis, or for whenever publicity is required. Now, when you look at media relations, what is media relations at the core? Let's just unpack that very quickly before we move on to how to actually draw up a successful media relations strategy. Now, very important is to understand that you need this section to know it well in order for you to successfully complete your formative assessment 1. Media relations, if you unpack it, is so in a company that is quite massive. So if you look at huge companies, right, like your banks, your big 5 banks like your ABSA, Standard Bank, Nedbank, or you look at Unilever, Nestle, or any other company for that matter that is quite massive, you generally have media relations as a standalone, right? And within that team, you would have someone who deals with issues management or crisis communication. And what the media relations division or department does is that they build good long-term sustainable relationships with journalists, editors, etc. Now, what happens is if you have really good relationships with the journalist, and for example, that journalist is at News 24 or De Beeld, and that journalist is going to be leaving, right? That journalist, if you have built a good relationship with them, a really good professional relationship, they will let you know that they are leaving, and this is who is going to be replacing them, if they do know, right? So you need to be very mindful of the fact that media relations also, the part of it is about building relationships, good foundational relationships, professional relationships with journalists, with editors, with station managers, with producers, right? So that you are able to make not only your job easier, because remember, there are tons of companies, hundreds and thousands of companies out there who are trying to get information published on those platforms. What sets you apart is going to be the editorial angles that the media team are going to come up with, right? And when there's a crisis, how to be able to foresee that and to be able to plan, right? And be prepared. There are some crises that we are not actually prepared for. So if you look at the COVID-19 pandemic, none of us were prepared for that. Now, one of the things is, as a public relations practitioner, is to be very agile, right, and to work with speed. So when COVID-19 pandemic hit, we were not prepared for it as public relations practitioners. However, you have to think on your feet, you have to be agile, right? And you have to work with, in terms of speed, you've got to be able to manage the situation. So go out and do some research. Companies that manage the COVID-19 pandemic crisis well, and others that did not. And you will see a list that comes up online. So how to draw up a successful media relations strategy. Reminder for FA1, right, which you should be finalizing or almost finished with it, because it's due in a very short period of time. In about a week's time or so, it's due, right? So what you need to do is research the available media. Now, please bear in mind, whichever company that you are going to be working in, right, clients, right? And what you need to do is look at the industry that those clients are based in. So if they are in the animal health industry, right, you would look at all of the media that are relevant to that specific industry, as well as business media, if they are like announcing results, or they've acquired $1 million company from overseas that's going to manufacture vaccines for people, for cancer treatments, or whatever the case may be, right? So you kind of get the picture of what I'm trying to say, is that if they are in the pharmaceutical or they're in the healthcare space, you need to ensure that you reach out to those journalists, and you don't look at every available media in every industry and send your press release to them or pitch it to them, right? So you need to identify key media contacts. Now, when you look at a the media context that you're going to be working with, it's generally the journalist, right, or producer of a show, or the station manager, or the program manager that you're going to be dealing with. Editors generally, in some cases where there is a gap and there is no journalist at the time, right? Just say one journalist left, and there isn't someone there at that current point in time, you would then deal with the editor. So that's why it's very important that you make sure you have the most updated key contacts, because if you send information to that specific journalist and they've left, they don't have an out of office mentioning that they've left, you think that they've received it. So that is why what you can do then in that instance is, if you have an updated list, then you would actually go through to the editor and deal with them. So there are various tools, and one of the tools that I use personally that's very, very helpful is called Media Manager. Now, you may have one person in the team who's solely responsible for ensuring that a media list gets updated maybe once a month or every second month, or whatever the case may be, right? You will have a media manager is a fantastic tool because that platform is updated quite regularly. And what happens is it gives you the name of the journalist, they give you the industry that they cover news for, etc. Briefing those contacts and providing them with detailed information. So when you are getting to know these media contacts, some of the things you will do is firstly introduce yourself, and please be authentic. Be your authentic self. Don't try to be somebody else when you are pitching to the media. They will be able to see through it. Be authentic and say that you want to build a relationship, a professional relationship with them. This is who you are, your name, your title. This is the company that you are working for. This is a little bit about the company, and this is the focus areas, etc., etc. Try and get some interesting, like top 10 interesting facts about your company. That the company was established in a little town in Bloemfontein, or whatever the case, or in Pumalanga, or wherever. Get a couple of interesting facts that the journalist, you will be able to engage with the journalist and give them that information. Arranging interviews and visits. So what you can do is, part of media relations is arranging interviews. So you may not be the person who is well versed on a specific topic that needs to be published in the media, right? You would find the correct person. What you would do is, generally before the interview, you would engage with the journalist, right? And you would perhaps ask them for a list of questions that they are going to ask the interview, right? So that's the interviewer and interviewee, right? So the interviewer will be the journalist, and you would then brief that person in your organization and tell them to answer it. Right? So maybe they have all the information about the specific topic, but they can't. So what you then do is you would help them craft the messaging or the answers with the facts embedded into it, right? So you would be the coordinator in terms of arranging with the media person that the interview will take place on such and such date. If it's on TV, right? The person from your organization, or if it's yourself, would actually go through to the studio, and you would then get interviewed by the anchor or whoever it may be. Also, in terms of visits. Now, sometimes media, you want to arrange a media tour or media visit. Just say your company has built a manufacturing facility that's going to create 5,000 jobs in South Africa. Now, is that a worthy news angle or an editorial angle? Yes, or even 10,000 jobs, 50,000 jobs. So what you would do is you would arrange for a media tour, and at the tour you would have people like your CEO present, the person who is going to be the head of that manufacturing facility, and so forth. And what would happen is, the format is, so in terms of the logistics, The media relations team are going to be responsible of liaising with that manufacturing facility, the team there, and then also at the same time liaising with the media contact to advise them of the details and confirming it. And on the day, what would happen is you would have to deal with the team, the manufacturing team, right? About refreshments, things like refreshments, right? Arranging parking for the media. So reserved parking for them when they enter into the facility. The other thing which you would be responsible for, or the team, the media relations team, would be responsible for, is putting together what we call media packs. So as soon as a journalist arrives, we would have an attendance register where they fill in their details, sign in. You would then hand them their press or media pack. And some people go very creatively with press packs. Some people just keep it simple as far as having a folder. And what you would do is you would include in that press or media pack the press release, a printed copy of photos that you've included. You would include a memory stick with the press release in a Word document, because remember, if the journalist is going to add information to the story, if they only have a printed copy, right, or if it's saved on file on the memory stick as a PDF document, they have got to now convert that into a Word document. So you would save it as an open file, as a Word document, so they can literally copy and paste and edit. And then you would also attach, make sure your folders on your memory stick are clearly defined. So you will say heading press release, and in the folder you would have the press release, right? Then you would also have images, right? And you would include images. So one of the things is, depending on what kind of a manufacturing facility it is, you would want to have photos taken beforehand, right, of the facility, and loaded, excuse me, uploaded onto the memory stick. So you would do that beforehand, and then on the day, generally what would happen is there's photos taken with the media and like the management team of the company. So make sure, and then also what is nice to do depending on the budget, and this is why it's important to do planning. So you can include a little gift, and in terms of so you can keep it, if you want, not as a folder. You can use gift bags. So I've used gift bags sometimes, right? And what I would do is that each journalist's name would be printed, and it would be stapled or attached to the bag, so it's personalized, right? And then you would put a gift or gifts in there, branded gifts. So whether it's a branded mug or pens, or depending on the budget, you can get really nice gifts. So writing special articles and features. So if you were arranging a media tour, right, and it's going to be, you have not only people from the newspapers, you have magazines, journalists and editors from magazines, right? And they're going to do a special feature in the Entrepreneur magazine, or whichever magazine it is. Just say your client is an entrepreneur, and they have now created, through this manufacturing facility, 100,000 jobs in South Africa. So the editor from the Entrepreneur magazine, as well as a journalist, would attend, and they would do a feature article on the company, and in terms of the number of jobs they're going to be creating and what impact. So a lot of the energy or the power supply that this manufacturing facility is going to get is from the solar panels. So they are completely off the grid, if I can say. What does that do? It means that there is going to be less pressure on the grid, right? Because they're then procuring they're making use of solar energy solutions, right, to actually get power. And they're making use of generators as backup, etc. Encouraging debates on issues of importance. So you will have, there are times where you have a media briefing with the CEO of the company and maybe two members of the leadership team. And what they would do is you would have a media briefing session. So sometimes it's called a media luncheon, where you would also arrange lunch for the media. And you want to find out about the impact of certain things. And this is something that journalists are going to ask questions. The CEO or the spokesperson is going to answer them, right? Now, at the media briefing, sometimes journalists, if you ask them, they send questions, sometimes they don't. You have to preempt then questions that the media or the journalists may ask, right? And you need to prep, if you are not the spokesperson, you need to prep your spokesperson that if they ask you about this specific question, right, this is how it should be answered. And you would help craft them, right? You would help craft the message for them. Remember one important thing, and that's a point I keep coming back to, is that your CEO may not have the best writing skills. He is excellent at managing the operations of an organization, but he cannot write in terms of the way a public relations practitioner should write. They should have creative writing. They should have, when you look at job specs, you will see excellent verbal and written skills, which means they're probably looking at for someone who's able to present, right, and who does it well. They're looking for a spokesperson possibly, and written skills, excellent written skills. The reason why they need that is because the CEO does not have excellent writing skills. He is not going to get trained on it, right? He doesn't want to get trained on it. So you are going to have to play that part in terms of assisting. So monitoring social media. Another thing that media relations, the team does, is they have, so what would normally happen is because social media is so broad, and depending on the number of social media platforms that that company or your client is making use of, and depending on the amount of traffic that is on those social media platforms, right? You would engage the services of a company that does social media monitoring. And how social media monitoring works, it is the very same for print, online, and broadcast media, right? Whereby what would happen is you would give that company keywords. For example, one of the keywords can be the name of the company. So as soon as it is published on social media, an alert is sent through to the company, right? And the company would then alert you. So if it's a possible crisis, that, or generally what would happen if there is no crisis or anything, you would get daily reports, right? So, or newsletter generated from this organization advising that these were the social media alerts on these platforms, and this is the content that was attached to it. So that is media relations in if you're looking at it from a holistic point of view. Okay, now corporate reputation management. Companies, and that is why public relations has become positioned as a management function. For the very same reason is that companies these days are looking at their reputation, right? And any company out there, whether it's a non-profit organization, whether it's a startup, whether it's an entrepreneur, right? Or a business that's running, all of them want to have a positive image, right, in the public domain. So one of the things that you will be responsible for if you pursue that aspect of it is reputation management. Now, reputation management, what it entails is back to research. Now, how do you know what is the current reputation of an organization? You would have to conduct something like a perception audit. Now, perception audit, you have market research companies that go out there and you would say, we want to know, you would obviously have to give them a brief, right? You want to know what is the current image of the organization, how is it portrayed in the public domain, right? These are our key stakeholders, right? And our customers and things like this. And the market research company would go and conduct that audit for you and come back and be able to tell you this is what is the general perception of the company's reputation out there, right? So it's about building and sustaining a favorable corporate reputation that can be achieved through a variety of corporate branding activities, right? So there's different branding activities that can be done. If you drive past any street, right, where there's companies, if you look at the branding on the building, it gives you a sense of the pride that that company takes that's associated with their brand, right? So corporate reputation is influenced by corporate image, which is the result of the interaction of all experiences, impressions, beliefs, feelings, even attitudes, and knowledge that people have about a company. Now, many organizations, like if you look at ESCOM right now, their image is very negative. Why I say that is because load shedding is a reality of our lives every single day. None of us are exempt from load shedding, right? And you see the schedules, they change. It's a moving target. One day it's on level 2, one day it's on level 1. Now it's moved back today. It's moved to level 4 and so forth, right? So there's different companies. Even if you look at a company at Steinhoff and go and read up about the Steinhoff case study and the saga around Steinhoff and how. So what happens is when customers purchase a product, the experience they have with that product or service. So if you buy a phone, you buy a product, right? What is the impression of the company when they look at what they're doing in terms of corporate social responsibility, right? The feelings and knowledge that people have about a company. Now, remember, similarly, like in organizations where you have the grapevine, which is where employees, information travels, through the grapevine in a company. Similarly, if someone has a really, really bad experience about a company, whether it's through the product or service or customer service. So when you phone customer services on a company, and if you hold 20 minutes and then you get, and this has happened to me, that's what I'm saying. And then eventually when someone answers the phone, they put you on through to someone else and you wait another 10 minutes and then you get put through to someone else because it's not the right person. You have a poor impression and a really bad experience of the company. So family and friends, right, of those individuals that have had these negative experiences will go and tell their family and their friends, this is the worst company. Don't ever go and buy this or don't ever use their service. It is just shocking, right? And that then influences, because it's family and friends and they've had that experience and they're sharing it with their family and friends, they tend to believe that, right? However, in very few cases, you get it where someone has had a fantastic experience, they share it with family and friends. That is why you have companies asking about your experience that you've had based on your purchase or customer service. And what they do is they ask for permission for it to be used as testimonials in some instances. It's everything a company does and does not do. Products, right? So in terms of the impressions, in terms of experience, knowledge, feelings, beliefs, attitude, it's everything that relates to a product, a service, a company's letterhead, how their emails are sent to you, their brochures, right? Their manufacturing facilities or factories, right? Their offices, their branding on their trucks, right? So a lot of people invest in the look and feel of their building. So when you drive past, you think, wow. I go back to Discovery offices in Sandton. When you drive past, you say, wow, because it looks amazing, right? There's a lot of other buildings. If you drive around, you will see the pride that they've taken in terms of branding and in terms of letterheads. So even these days, it's not so much the letterheads, but emails that you receive from a company, how it's addressed, the tone, etc. Even a telephone call, right? A telephone call that you have with one of the managers. So you're complaining about. So in some instances, how a company handles a situation, right, determines the outcome. So if I have a really bad experience, like I did the other day with a service, right? So and it's not the first time. So I called this company and I wanted to speak to the line manager. And I said, I'm not happy with the service and. So the way that the line manager dealt with my, um, if I can call it grievance, against this process and this being consistently poor service from the company, the way she dealt with it made me feel differently after I had that conversation and received the email about how they were going to rectify it and what was going to be done about it, right? So there are ways that it can be changed. So, for example, I mentioned yesterday, if you buy a Cadbury's chocolate, a slab, and it is completely stale, right? And you phone the customer service and you say, this is a product I bought. So they will generally ask you, can you give me the barcode? Which store did you buy it from? The date you purchased it from. The reason they ask you for that, so what they will do is, well, is that they will compensate you, is that they will send you gift vouchers to actually replace the product, but they will give it to you not to the exact value of the product that you purchased. It will be 3 or 4 times more than that. And the reason for them asking for the barcode and where you purchased it and the date you purchased it is that they need, then the company, the team goes out, the sales representatives will go out, they will then uplift that batch, replace it, and they will take it through to the offices or the factories to investigate what went wrong with that batch. It could be purely the fact that the delivery vehicle, it was a very hot day, right? And the chocolates melted and then they remolded again, or they became firm again. And that caused some issue with it. It could have been that, or it could be anything. So that's what companies do when they ask you for details. And the same goes for if you buy a bottle of tomato sauce or a can of baked beans. If there's something wrong, they always ask you for the barcode, where you purchased it, the date, etc. Right? It's the way it treats its employees, its recruitment policies, its corporate social investment. Right? Now, one of the things I mentioned the other day is if you go to Eskom's 2022 annual report or integrated report, work for Eskom, then I'm able to actually go through and apply for a job there because it sounds like a really great company. Now, you have in South Africa the top company to work for. One of the companies that I always look at, they were at one stage, I think, in first place for 10 years in a row, is Unilever. Unilever has an amazing an amazing employee, focus on employees, right? There are companies, they are not companies, they're employees that stay with the organization for years and years and years. And they are very loyal because of that. Yes, you may have a few people that may leave because they've had different experiences, but yeah, at one stage they were, I think, 10 years in a row, the top employer of the year, right? Moving on to publications. Now, this is twofold, bear in mind. Depending on your role in an organization, but remember it's important for you in your learning journey to learn about all of them. There are a number of publications that will be external, that the company publishes, and you will have internal publications. If we look firstly at the external publications, right? So researching, designing, and producing a variety of publications is another important responsibility of the public relations practitioners. Writing the content for these publications is the key focus and should be done in the support of the business strategy. Internal and external communication content must support the objectives of the organizations. So some examples include the employee newsletters, memos, employee handbooks, manuals, annual general reports, right? Media releases, statements. So if you look externally, in one of my previous jobs, I was also responsible for the annual or the integrated report, to write the leadership and the CEO's, the chairman and CEO's leadership message, and different sections in the integrated report. I was responsible for putting together content. Now, do I just go and suddenly say, okay, I'm going to start writing this? It takes me days and days and days to research before I actually start writing, because it's a hell of a lot of work, right? So you would be involved in writing content. The other thing that you may be responsible for, right, would be actually working with a production company that does the layout, the design, the fancy graphics. So graphic design, when it comes to PowerPoint, you're going to learn how to put PowerPoint presentations together. It's a skill that you would need, because often you find as public relations practitioner, if you have a delegation or the media coming through for a site tour, you are going to have to put together the presentation for the CEO when they're presenting about the organization. So you need to upskill in terms of your presentation, PowerPoint presentation skills, and how to do animations and slideshows, not slideshows, but animations and transitions, and specifically about the design, right? So then you would have an agency that you work with, and you would literally sit with them and say, on the front page, I want X, Y, and Z. So if you're doing the integrated report for the company, you would be responsible then for collating information from the different divisions. And you need to chase up on deadlines when information is not received. And then it needs to be proofread, edited, and go through for approval before it is printed. The same goes for media releases, memos, that goes into the external environment. You are going to need to know how to actually do that, right? So internally, you get what you call the employee newsletters. So it's internal magazines. It differs from company to company. So some companies would publish this on a monthly basis. Some companies on a quarterly basis, so they would just do 4 issues a year. But some companies, because it's so big, the organization, they would publish it once a year, or once a month, right? There are other companies that have decided that we want to do this publication once a year. There's a company that I know that does it only once a year, but it looks like a proper magazine that you would buy from a store. It is that thick. So the reason why it's important to probably keep the frequency like quite close, whether it's monthly or every second month or quarterly, is because news is relevant. Now, you would generally have, like in a magazine, an editor's note. If you are responsible for that magazine, you would be the one writing that message. And it's generally done when you're finished with the entire magazine. So, what would happen is you would have to go through the business and you have to be a journalist. You have to go and find out what is happening within the business. You would extract that information. So, people would send you information sometimes, and don't think they're going to send you in a information that is ready to print. Sometimes people send information as PowerPoint slides, which you've got to extract. They will send you a press release of an external event. Now, the purpose of the internal magazine is to keep employees of the company, right? Um, you want to keep them informed about the activities, the new developments, the changes within the company. So if a new product is being launched, many companies, what they do is, apart from putting this information into a publication, into the magazine for the employees, they would do desk drops. So the product, a sample would be put on everyone's desk for them to try the product. Because remember, a product or a service, right? Remember, a company's employees are also customers or consumers. So then what you would do is you need to be a journalist and go through and find information. Now also look for human interest stories. So someone who's graduated, right? They've completed their Bachelor of Commerce degree and they've graduated and they did it part-time and it was difficult and whatnot. You would have to interview that person. So you would play the role of the journalist where you would set up some time with them. You would ask them for a photo and you would interview them in terms of the journey, their learning journey. You would add probably a quote from them that's put in there and what this achievement means to them. So then once you have all the articles that are rewritten, right, edited and all of that, then you would sit with the agency who's doing the design and layout, and you would give them what you call a pagination. So a pagination is a list where we say front page, this is the news that's going on. The second page, third page, fourth page, fifth page, it's giving them direction of what news is positioned where in the newsletter. Once that is done, the agency will go off and it will take them a couple of days. They will position everything and return you a proof, what we call a proof. So remember, depending on when your publication is needs to be delivered to employees, you need to have a planning document that goes back a few weeks, right? It's a monthly publication. You've got a very tight timeline. If it's quarterly, you've got a bit of leeway, but remember, printing of a publication takes anything from a week to a week and a half to get the printed copy, right? Depending on if that printer has 50 jobs and when it gets briefed in, you are job number 20 or whatever the case may be. So it's very important to look at things like that. So that is why writing skills are very important. Having an inquiring mind is very important. Being creative is very important, right? Now, when that magazine comes back, the first proof with everything in it, you're going to have to look at the look and feel, right? You're going to have to read and proofread and edit. You may have a team, you may have to work on this on your own. The same goes for manuals. So for example, if there's a new safety regulation, health and safety regulation that the company wants to promote within the organization, you would sit with the team that deals with health and safety and work on what is the kinds of information. You would help them write up some of the information. You would interview them and get the information and write it up, send it to them to verify that it is correct, the facts, and then you continue with that. Branding and corporate advertising. This happens when an organization wants to advertise to control the message placement and timing. So companies, you will see full page adverts, right? You will see in other magazines, there are products that are advertised that are on the second page, maybe of a magazine. Others will be on the page 15 of the magazine. Now remember, if you are placed on page 2, means that you've had to pay a higher premium, right, to be able to have page 2 as opposed to page 15, right? And it may have happened that that person, the company who wanted to advertise, who is now on page 15, they initially wanted page 2, but it was already taken by another company. Billboards, right? Billboards go up for specific reasons, right? When people want to send a specific message. If you look at TV advertisements, if you look at Nando's as a very good example, whenever something happens in the country, it's a bit tongue in cheek where they have humor to the advert, right? Nando's does that because they can and they get away and they do it in a very subtle way that they do not get into hot water for it. So it's very interesting in terms of how and when a company wants to place an advert or messaging, whatever. So if you have a health magazine, maybe the ones that you get free or you get from specific stores, and it's now we're reaching, well, we're on the last day of March. Tomorrow we get into April, and then we've already started. I mean, this week we felt the cold, that winter is now on our doorstep, right? So if you have a product that's immune boosting, and once your immune system is boosted, you're less likely to get colds and flus. That company would then go and maybe do a front page, right? Or an article or something on the benefits of taking this specific product to avoid, right, getting colds and flus very often. Another company that also may do this, and for a lot of you that don't know this, is during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? When we had all of the health protocols in place, so it meant wearing a mask wherever you went. It meant regularly washing your hands and sanitizing your hands, and also social distancing. Do you know that, and this is facts, right, that the amount of people that actually got colds and flus during 2020 and going a little bit into 2021, especially in 2020, had reduced substantially. There weren't many people getting colds and flus in 2020. They were getting COVID, yes, but colds and flus, it reduced substantially. Why? Because germs, if we touch something, a desk or a handle, germs get onto our hands, and we touch our face or whatever, we tend to get sick, right? So it goes to show that if you apply those protocols, you are less likely to get sick, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting stat, and it proves that, if you protect yourself that way, because also if it's an airborne virus, you're going to catch it. You won't, the likelihood of you catching it if you're wearing a mask is less. Sponsorships. This is where a whole lot of money is invested or spent by companies in the lucrative sponsorship market. Public relations will often get exposure for sponsorship deals or suggest ways of securing exposure from sponsorship. Now, if you look at the picture on the left, it's soccer, basketball, football, all of those things. So if you look at the major sporting events, right? The 94.7 Cycle Challenge, right? Sponsored by Bar One. The ABSA Curry Cup, sponsored by ABSA. Now, generally, what happens is when a company invests a substantial amount of money, they want naming rights. So if you look at ABSA Curry Cup, ABSA want naming rights where their name is actually mentioned in the event. So this involves a lot of money, and you will often get requests, which you would then speak to the relevant marketing teams or divisions if they are interested in actually getting involved in sponsorship or not. Because there are some instances where, like ABSA Curry Cup, for example, would say that the condition that they are coming on board as a sponsor and paying this amount of money is that no other company can have a sponsorship, even if it's a smaller version of it. Other instances where you see events that are being sponsored, you'll see different companies' logos at the bottom or on the banners. They will put up banners. That means there's a number of sponsors who have participated in that specific event or charity or whatever. Promotional activities. Now, as it says on the left, special offer, right? Promotional activities, they are often high profile and media sensitive. They can range from conferences, planning exhibitions, preparing audio-visual literature, prepping direct mail literature. So you will need to work with other professionals in marketing, design, and promotional fields. So if you look at a promotional activity that's, just say there's a major event happening and there's different exhibitors, right? And you would then work with the marketing team to ensure that that is put together. So you would essentially be part of the cross-functional team when planning for that exhibition. It could be an audio visual where you walk into the space where you've got an exhibition and there's a video playing of your organization and the work that they're doing in different communities, right? If it's an exhibition about carbon footprint and recycling and the environment, etc., you could have a video playing, right, in one of the sections of the companies, the company that you work for, right? All the corporate social initiatives that they're doing and what they're doing to, right, that is linked to saving the planet or preserving our natural resources. So recycling of grey water or making use of grey water. If you don't know what grey water is, go and research it. Okay, so you need to actually read widely, guys, because as a public relations professional, when you join an organization, and I mentioned it yesterday, it's integral that you go and research the organization, sit with different people, ask them what is their division all about, what is it that they do, learn special terminology. Grey water is linked to manufacturing facilities. Visit the manufacturing facility, find out about what they do, how are they managing the carbon footprint at that facility to ensure that they reduce their carbon footprint and the impact on the environment. So you need to have a very inquiring, creative mind. Issues and risk management. Remember earlier on, we spoke to media relations, right? This needs to be carefully monitored. Now, we touched on it a little bit yesterday. Issues and risk management is things that could potentially affect a company that you proactively need to identify and have a plan in place that should this issue or risk occur. What is the planned course of action that the company needs to take. So crisis or crises plans may need to put into place preparations of statements, media briefings, press conferences, social media, website updates, keeping staff and stakeholders up to date with the situation. Now, this is why we emphasize your media list needs to be up to date. Because if a crisis happens and you need to hold a media briefing and your list is not up to date, you are going to be wasting time scrambling to find out who is the correct person that actually needs to be invited, right? And that is going to cost you time. The other thing which is done in many organizations is they have what they call a holding statement, and that is linked to issues in risk management. So we have a what if scenario. What if this happens in an organization? A holding statement is prepared as a draft document to say, this is the situation that happened. This is how we're dealing with it, right? So if you have contractors that come onto site, for example, they need to do renovations or construction, and something happens, and unfortunately, the scaffolding falls down on 3 people. Luckily, they did not die from it, or in the unfortunate and sad instance that they do pass on, right? You've got to have a holding statement for that. If there's strike action happening outside your building, right? If you think back to the WITS example a couple of weeks ago, when students were protesting outside WITS University, did they have a holding statement, or were they prepared for that issue or risk, right? You need to also look at the media and interrogate that, and also be mindful of that, that was the company prepared or not for that specific risk. So it is being very, very vigilant and looking very broadly at everything that could go wrong. Some holding statements even go as far as, if there's a hostage situation, if the CEO of the company is kidnapped or held for ransom or something or the other. Anything and everything is possible in this day and age. You've heard of instances this happened. So what you also have to do with issues and risk management, and it's also, as I said, once again, it's linked to media relations. You have to have sort of a part of the planning process is that if this situation happens, right, where there is this issue or risk that occurs, the list of key people that would need to form part of the crisis team. You need to have their mobile numbers, right? And in some cases, I've even put their home numbers. So a crisis or an issue may arise not only during working hours, guys. Don't ever think that for 1 minute. It could happen on a Saturday, on a Sunday, right? So that's what I did, is I put cell phone numbers and I put their home numbers, and I put an alternative number in cases where they were willing enough to give me their partners or spouses number. That was also added. And then that list gets circulated to that core team. So it is a lot of planning, as you can see, a lot of research as well. So that it goes back to the point as to why you need to build good relationships with all key stakeholders in the business. Is because if you pick up the phone and you ask the managing director for a specific business, I need your mobile number, or you mail him, I need your mobile number, I need your this and this and this, because you are part of the crisis team for this issue or risk, you will get a quick response. You're not going to have to keep following up and phoning and calling and etc. Lobbying. Now, lobbying is something that is, it's activities that are employed by public relations to advocate an organization's position to political decision makers. Now, I'll give you an example of the pharmaceutical industry, and I use examples because my previous job, it was in the pharmaceutical industry, is when the Minister of Health determines what the price increase is going to be, right? The single is called the single price exit. Every year in about February or so, he announces it. What happens is different pharmaceutical companies, they get together, they have a body that they have formed, and they put comment and arguments together, and that is then taken to the minister in terms of whether in fact they feel that that increase, right, is too little. And based on, like, if you look at the interest rates yesterday, it went up 50 basis points. That is going to impact a whole lot of things, including the price of food. It's across the board, right? It's going to affect people who have student loans, who have home loans, who even have vehicle loans. Everything goes up. So what happens then is, and this is only for medication that's prescription related. If you look at a Panado or an Eno, you are not mandated what price increases you can put on those products, right? So what would happen is then this formal document would go through to a minister. The minister and his advisory body would team would look at it, and they would take a decision whether they're going to increase it or not, right? So that's a form of lobbying. Networking and social media. Identifying and developing networks of influential people is a starting point of community relations. Now we have public relations and now we have community relations. So public relations people are often at the hub of these networks. So for example, like the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, that's a regulatory body in South Africa that deals with healthcare, right? Is to become a part of those bodies, right? To attend sessions where they are addressing the press or individuals or organizations. You are part of that community, and you are going to be you're going to be integral in actually forming or becoming part or connecting someone to those particular networks, right? So also, if you are going to be doing public relations as a career, it is good to be a member of, for example, PRISA, Public Relations Institute of South Africa, or any industry, public relations, industry related body. We have some that are local, we have some that are international. Joining them and learning about trends, new developments, etc., right? And even going as far as following specific groups on social media, right? Seeing what is being said, and there may be key takeaways that you would need to share with the leadership team. So, public relations practitioners, what are we going to be involved in? Oh, you are now tired of this word research. Yes, research. Research comes about because it is so critical. There's no getting away from it. Gathering information about public opinion, trends, emerging issues, political climate, media coverage, concerns of consumer and environmental groups, and plan programs in response to this. You're obviously going to work with different key stakeholders. If you are not managing media relations or issues and risk management, you would work with the team, right, about emerging issues and put together a plan of action should this escalate, this issue or risk escalate. Planning and advising. Remember I said at one stage, we become public relations advisors more than practitioners because we give advice. So we determine what the needs are, what the priorities are, what goals and objectives, and collaborating with management or clients in problem-solving processes. And what we do is we give them suggestions if it's a problem, how to actually solve this particular problem. Media placement, content news media, right? Magazines, freelance writers, petition to broadcast or publish news and features about the organization. It may also include responding to media requests and acting as a spokesperson. I think I went into the thing about being a spokesperson. It's not necessarily your CEO or one of your directors. You might need to be that person, because that is why one of the key elements or skills that a public relations practitioner needs to have is good, excellent, they say excellent verbal and written skills, right? So that speaks to being a spokesperson, right? And also, the other thing is, don't dismiss freelance writers or journalists. Freelance journalists are not permanently employed by a news agency or a magazine. They write on a freelance basis. So they are hungry for stories and information that's newsworthy enough to publish. So do not discount them when you are doing your media list. It's very important to keep them as well in mind. Public relation techniques that are going to be vital to your job, right? Business knowledge. You need to be able to relate to the business practices and can enhance each one's success. You need to be a well-rounded, well-researched person that knows about the country and the economic climate as well as global issues. So when we say economic climate, like yesterday when the interest rate went up by 50 basis points, ask yourself this question right now while you're listening to this. Did you know that that happened? Now, what normally happens is you normally hear round about Monday or Tuesday, the analysts saying that there's an expected interest rate decrease or increase later this week. It's generally done on a Thursday, but it could also be dependent on the timing of the month. So what I've noticed, and is a trend, it's normally 2 or 3 days before the next new month. So tomorrow is the 1st. This was announced yesterday, so it's normally a few days prior to that. So you need to know what is the unemployment rate in a country. You need to know what is the consumer price index. What are the key factors that are affecting the economic instability? Yes, you have to delve into a bit of economics, right? But if you read about it, you'll be well versed. So if you need to know information like this, make sure then you are following maybe a specific channel that speaks on the economics and what is happening with the interest rate. And remember, when the Russia and Ukraine war started, right, that was a global issue, and how it in fact impacted South Africa. It had a negative impact on South Africa. Writing. You need to be skilled in writing media releases, speeches, newsletters, media motivations, radio and TV film scripts, trade papers, magazine articles, corporate adverts, social media messages, and website material. You're going to find one of the key parts or functions of your role is going to be writing. So if you know that now in advance, get better at writing. Improve on your writing skills. There are countless resources that you can access. Even YouTube videos. You don't even have to read. There's YouTube videos on how to improve on your writing skills. One of the key things that I tell a lot of people is that one of the easiest ways to actually improve on your writing skills is to read extensively. Not sure how many of you actually read extensively. I'm not talking just about your study material, but reading books, right? Becoming a well-read individual. So you are going to be writing, the CEO is going to ask you when you get to that level, and I often had this in my experience. The CEO would say, I am doing this event, I need a speech. I would ask him, okay, what are your thoughts in terms of what are the key messages that you want to get out? Because remember, a CEO does not have time. They literally have 5 or 10 minutes, right? Unless it's a freer day and they have more time. But generally, I would say, okay, what are the top 3 things that you want to come across in your speech, or the top 5 things? And he would say this and this and this, this and this and this. And I would take that, and then I would go and write the speech and send him a draft. He would look at it, make his changes, and then it's good to go. But what happens is when you build trust with the leaders in the organization, one of the things that the CEO did, or any of the other directors, they would say, I've made changes. Can you please reread this and see if it makes sense and that there's no errors, and then send it back to me? That is when you are at a place of trust, but it takes a long time to get there, guys. It's not an overnight process. Editing. Now, one of the things is you're going to have is a very sharp eye. You need to pick up spelling, grammar, all of those things in any communication that you write. There are going to be times where you are going to write something, right? You rewrite it, right? And you even write a 3rd or 4th version of it, depending what it is. You have to then look with a very fine eye, or give a trusted advisor or a trusted person in an organization who has a very fine eye to help you with picking up errors. Because remember, when you write something, you generally cannot, sometimes there are blind spots and you're unable to pick up your mistakes. So I generally find someone in the organization who has a very good eye, right? So for me, it was the head of strategy. I would say, please read this press release and see if there's no spelling mistakes, errors, etc. And they would do that because you build relationships with people, and they do you these favors when asked for, because it is not part of their roles and responsibilities to help you. Production. So it can be very multifaceted and can be very challenging. So you need to be creating communication using multimedia knowledge, art, photography to produce corporate videos, audio visual productions. Now, you would generally just say your company wants to make a corporate social investment video, or corporate video that speaks to, this is the company, this is what it's all about, etc. What you need to do is you would work with a production company, because you do not have that skill, right? And the tools and the technology. And what you would also be responsible for is for writing of the script, right? So it would be intro is, this is what's going to be. You'd have someone doing a voiceover, and they would talk about a certain thing while there's imagery that's being shown. Then at exactly 2 minutes, this is what will start. The CEO will start speaking, right? His speech will finish at 2 minutes 50 seconds, or 3 minutes. And then exactly at 5 minutes, you would have this happening. And then in instances where you are doing voiceovers, where it means someone is talking in the background and there's imagery being shown, right? You would need to write the script for that person who's doing the voiceover. So production can be tricky. It's a lot of hard work, and it's time consuming as well, because it needs to be a thorough process. So once you complete with your first draft of that video, it would be probably sent to your line manager, or it would be played to the board members. And maybe a board member says, no, we need to shorten this segment, and we need to do this. And then that would be revised, and a revised version would be sent to them. Once they've approved it, then it would go on the website or into the public domain. Speaking, right? A lot of people do not like public speaking, right? Face to face, addressing groups, press conferences, presentations. Guys, you have to have nerves of steel. You have to build it. It's a skill. Can be done, right? Face-to-face addressing people, being able to read a room, right? Being able to, when a press conference is happening, now it can sometimes get a bit of out of hand. One of the things is journalists will ask you questions that are not related to what the press conference is about. I would suggest that you go and have a look at the, what is it? The ambassador. She was the ambassador, Jacinda Ardern, right? She was an ambassador, and she had resigned from her post. New Zealand. She was the New Zealand Prime Minister, sorry. Jacinda Ardern, and she resigned. And what happened is she held a press conference, right? And one of the things is the way she managed to hold her own in terms of when she was asked questions that were not related to the press briefing, how she brings that journalist back to where they needed to be in terms of answering the questions. I thought it was quite phenomenal, but you can go and have a look when you have some time. Go and Google it and have a look at her press briefing that she had. Public relations techniques, trainings. So there are times where you are going to have to train, right? Whether it's working with your executives and they are having some formal training on listening skills or whatever, leadership skills, you are going to work with a company who is skilled at doing training, and you are going to arrange all of these, what can I call them? All of the organizing of this is going to sit with you, even up to and including the refreshments on the day. So tea and coffee in the morning with refreshments, your tea break at 10 o'clock, then at 12 o'clock is your lunch break. So you are going to stand up and you are going to welcome everyone, your executive team. You are going to say to them, thank you for making the time, etc., etc. And today you've got so-and-so, you do an introduction of the person who's going to be conducting the training. They have 20 years experience in doing this, blah, blah, blah. Just say it's media training. And you are now going to hand it over to them. The program for the day is going to be as follows. You're going to take them through it, right? You're also going to do things like tell them where the ablution facilities are, where the bathrooms are. And in the case of an emergency, to be able to advise them where are the emergency exits that they need to make use of. In case there's a fire, in case there is something that's happening, you need to be well versed. In terms of management, managing a team, projects, events, finances, you will get to a point if you choose public relations as your career, where you're going to have a team of people who report to you, right? You are going to have to be a leader to certain projects, events, and the other thing which you will have is a budget, which you are going to be responsible for in terms of managing, accounting for. At the end of this of the financial year, you are going to have to account how the money was spent. If you've gone over budget, why? If you are under budget, great, you've saved the company money. And if you are not using your budget, why are you not using it for, say, team building for your team? So it can be a very exciting time. It's a lot of work, but you need these skills in order to be really a good leader, especially when you have a team that you have reporting to you. Remember, they are people who need to be inspired and motivated by you, right? You cannot be a dictator. It doesn't work like that. You need to be a really, really good leader. And leadership is something that as you go along in your career, you're going to learn about. Now, remember we mentioned about slide 15 earlier on. What skills do you have to look for in a public relations practitioner? The skills that is needed, as you can see, the guy on the right is multitasking very well there. You can see his to-do lists are already ticked there on his one of his right hands. He's got a, more than two hands, which is what you as a public relations practitioner is going to have to do. You're going to have to juggle like never before. You're going to have knowledge and use of social media platforms. Now, the proper use of social media platforms. I know we use social media in our personal lives to post. If we're at an event, we're going to post, but the proper use in the professional sense of the word. Organizational ability and administrative talent. Please do not think public relations is a glorified position where you sit in an Eiffel Tower. You are going to have to do admin tasks like reconciling your budget. Communication proficiency, the way you speak, the way you articulate yourself, and the way you write, you need to be proficient in that. You need to be lively, inquiring mind. You need to have tenacity and adaptability. Tenacity is when things are falling apart, you have the courage and the strength to keep going and to make things, to put the glue and make things stick together, to be adaptable in changing situations. If you are busy with something and it's very important and the CEO or one of your directors or one of the senior executive comes to your door and they said, I need your help now, I am in a crisis, are you going to look at them and say no? Well, you need to also choose your battles very wisely, guys, because remember, relationship building is very important. Moral courage and integrity. You need to do what's right. You need to have the courage to do what's right. Professionalism. When you pitch up or show up, when you get up in the morning and you get dressed and you show up at work, do not be wearing a mini skirt. Now, here is the thing. In a work environment, remember, public relations speaks to image. What image you give of yourself in terms of the way you dress, in terms of the way you speak. If you speak with slang, you are going to be portrayed in a certain way. So please be mindful of the fact, yes, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa does say you have the freedom of speech, you can dress the way you want, you can do things, the way you want. But when you walk into a professional environment, right, and the dress code is professional, you need to be dressed properly, neatly, and smartly, right? It doesn't have to be the most expensive clothes, but you cannot be pitching up in a miniskirt and a crop top. You are going to be sending really, really negative signals to the organization. Unless it's an organization where the trend is to wear crop tops and miniskirts or shorts and a t-shirt, tackies. If it's everybody is doing it and that is the company culture, then by all means do it. Culturally, you see, even on my best days, I have my glitches. So let me try this one more time. Culturally sensitive and engaging. So remember, in an organization, you cannot be judgmental on people. Remember, there are people with disabilities. And when we speak of disabilities, it's not someone just on a wheelchair or someone in crutches. We have people who have mental health issues, right? We have people who are going through personal problems, right? You need to be someone who is culturally sensitive and engaging to all individuals. Now, look at those characteristics or traits that public relations professional needs to have, and we'll go further down, but you need to tick which ones am I? Am I lively, inquiring? Do I have an inquiring mind? I need, from this point on, for those that are listening to the catch-up video, when you get to class, whether you are online or whether we are face-to-face, you need to be asking questions in class. Otherwise, I am going to start asking questions and you're going to have to answer. I'm going to be doing that. So there's a heads up for you, for those that are listening in. Ethics and the public relations practitioner. Val Pottinger is a very good example. Please go and read up on that case study if you've never heard of it, or if you heard of it and really don't have full context, go and please research on it. Doing public relations ethically. If you have a client that is dodgy or is doing things underhanded, you have to make the differentiation whether you are going to continue doing work for this client, right? And it applies to the way the public relations and communications practitioner behaves. Personal integrity is part of your professionalism. You are judged by the way you act, right? They give expert advice and do not bribe or corrupt. Now, if this person says to you, and remember what we used the phrase earlier on, right? I'm actually just hit a blank there in terms of the word, is where they want you to go out there, right, and put out a message that is not correct, and they bribe you and say, I'll give you 150,000 or 200,000 if you get this published. Money can be very enticing to people at times, and that is when the professional integrity and personal integrity falls away. Is that they need the money and they may say, okay, I'm going to do this, right? So please be mindful of that. Public relations will not be successful unless it is trustworthy, and a business will not succeed unless it is trusted. The word is spin doctoring, guys. That's the one I was looking for. Is where you need to spin doctor something and make someone look good, or an organization look good, and they give you a whole lot of money, and you are spin doctoring for them. On page 18 of the textbook, the handbook with the bees and the hive on it, go through the PRISA code of ethics and professional standards for public relations and communication management. It is on page 18 of the textbook. What this means is that if you are a member of a public relations body like PRISA, one of the things you need to do is, they say in their code of ethics and professional standards, is that you need to behave and operate as ethically as possible with the highest of integrity. What will happen is, if you are found negligent and if you are plastered all over the newspaper for, like Val Pottinger was, right? You can then be kicked out of a professional body for not abiding, not because you didn't abide to, you did something specifically relating to their organization. It's because you are a member of that organization and you've let them down, and they do not want to be associated with someone who does not have that kind of integrity. So that is where we've reached the end of these slides. Just want to close this very quickly. So I need to do this very quickly, and I hope it's not going to cause a glitch. There we go. If it has a glitch, then like continuously, I will revert back to you. So what are we going to do now is we actually need to move on to something very critical. I just want to have a look here very quickly. This is already on Call Campus. Now we're going to talk formative assessment 1. You have probably seen this document, or you should have by now. It's the assessment titled South African Organization, Stakeholders, Reputation Management and Strategy, right, to be submitted on Cole campus between the 8th and the 16th of April, which is literally on our doorstep. It gives you the case study, right, talking about the Galaxy K Day, which took place on, let me find the date here now, on the 4th of March 2023. And it had a number of top artists like Mikasa, Jimmy Nevis, all of those artists, right? And Galaxy K Day will tell you exactly who the partners are, right? So the partnership is between KFM 94.5, the radio station, and Samsung. So Samsung Galaxy is the phones that you're familiar with, right, or heard of. And it is that partnership that collaborates, right? And they bring to everyone the Samsung Galaxy K-Day KFM 94.7, as you will see on the screen. So different partnerships there. And what we give you a whole lot of information about the ticket sales, what's happening, etc., etc. And it gives you where it was accessed from the information. Now, there's a number of things that you have to do, guys, right? So based on your reading of this article and other articles you can find on Galaxy K-Day, complete the questions below to restore and manage the reputation of Galaxy K-Day and welcome visitors back to this exciting event. Remember, with COVID-19, right, a lot of events and campaigns and whatnot had to be on hold. So especially the live music events had to be put on hold. They could not be held because of social distancing and all of that. So you have to list, explain, and provide examples of various stakeholders and special interest groups who will affect and be affected by the Galaxy K Day. Please remember, and when we go through the briefing document just now, that when you're looking at your stakeholders or special interest groups, you need to look at the demographics that speaks to age, etc., etc. Draw up a strategy to effectively communicate with each one of the stakeholders and special interest groups identified under point 1. The strategy should include special PR tools aimed at specific stakeholders that would be used as part of the strategy. As part of your strategy, point number 3, compile a detailed media list. Please do not use last year's one, which I was asked in class, if I recall. For those students that we were face to face, can they use last year's media list? Absolutely not. Please don't do that. We will know. And it needs to include at least 5 examples of South African media, magazines, newspapers, television, radios, websites, and that you would pitch in order to gain coverage for the Galaxy K Day event. You also need to include 5 editorial angles. You need 5 different editorial angles that could be pitched to any of the media on your list, which will result in positive coverage for Galaxy K Day. Now, please bear in mind, I'm going to mention this specifically. There is an assessment criteria and breakdown rubric that we have here. Now, technical, which is your formatting, referencing, did you follow the brief, grammar? These are basics. Now, I'm well aware that in Public Relations 1, there's something that you were taught, which is Academic Literacy 1 and 2. We use Harvard referencing. If you go to Cole Campus under modules, you will find a document, I think it's 31 pages, that teaches you how to reference. Please make sure that you use in-text referencing, and at the bottom, you have a full list of your referencing. Now, 30 marks alone, right, is contributed towards spelling and grammar, brief followed, technical skills of referencing, professional presentation. When you send through your formative assessment, make sure it looks good. It looks professional, right? Then for 25 marks is your stakeholders. Then for 30 marks is your communication strategy. And for 15 marks is your targeted media and your editorial angles. And then the rest of your briefing document gives you everything else, right? It even tells you where you can access it, how to upload, etc., etc., etc. Please make sure that it is uploaded before the time and not left for the last minute, guys. So one of the other things that has been done is we have got a presentation, which I'm not going to go extremely in the depth in, because Claire has done a recording of this, right, in order the briefing of the FA1 assignment. So what do you need to actually pass the FA1 assignment? You need to ensure you have a good understanding of stakeholders, communication tools or platforms, editorial angles, and media lists. Remember, your cover page creates a very important first impressions. You ever heard the saying, first impressions are the lasting one? If you walk into a workplace and on my first day, I am wearing stilettos with shorts and a crop top, that is the first impression I give my line manager and the people around me, right? You may think dressing is not a big thing in the workplace. Some places have a dress code which says you cannot wear this, you cannot wear that. This is what is acceptable to wear in the workplace. They don't give you price tags where they say you need to have a Gucci suit on or whatever. No, by all means not. They give guidelines because a workplace is a workplace. So please remember, your cover page needs to have your name and surname, student number. It needs to indicate that it's a PR2 FA1 assignment, which campus you are on. You are on Arcadia, right? For those students that I'm recording this specifically for, right? Your lecturer is me, Kavitha Singh, Arcadia campus. For those students, if you are not based on Arcadia, if you are based on the Sandton campus or Durban campus, your details will be different. Please make sure, remember, your cover page creates a very important first impression, especially when we are going to look at it. When we look at the very first page, it will give us an understanding of how seriously you've taken your assessment or your assignment. We need this to be a typed assignment. It needs to be individual work that must be researched, written, and revised by you. I want to make something very clear because this is coming up a lot. In the document, it's, I think, in the same document on Harvard referencing, or one of the documents there on core campus, there's something that speaks to paraphrasing. Now, guys, do not do this. Do not go to a textbook, take chunks of information that's been written in terms of definitions and, put it there, put a reference, in-text reference, and think I'm good to go. You need to paraphrase. Please go and look at that document. I'm making it very clear. You are allowed in certain instances, if you want to quote 3 words, if it's 3 words or more that you're using from a textbook, make sure that it's in inverted commas, that it's an indication that it is taken, extracted from the textbook. And remember, in your in-text references, guys, if you put Renee or Bienecker et al. Or Skinner et al., right? You put the year of the textbook when it was published, right? Just say it was whichever year, 2019 or 2016 or whatever. that you include next to it the page number that you have used the idea, or you've written it, you've paraphrased it in your own words, but the idea came from maybe this page. Okay, please go and have a look, because you will be marked down if you don't write in your own words. We will know whether you've written it in your own words. Please bear that in mind. Keep a copy of your assignment, right? Your cover page has to have your name, student number, subject, campus, etc. All of that on it. Make sure your name is correct on the cover page. No name equals no marks. We don't know who submitted it, so you will get no marks. The font type needs to be Times New Roman or Arial. Font size is 12 points. Line spacing is 1.5. Please don't go and fidget with the margins. Keep your margins at 1.5 all around, which is standard, right? Because the more you reduce your margins, the more cramped the page looks. The length is no less than 3 typed pages. That excludes your cover page, your reference list, right? Include a list of all the resources that you have referenced to complete your assignment. You must make a legitimate attempt to reference correctly using Harvard referencing method. Remember, that was part of academic literacy 1 subject. If you've forgotten, go back to your PR1 academic literacy notes and look. All work must be original. Penalties for plagiarism, as per the Boston Media House policy of a maximum of -50%, will apply if there are any forms of evidence of plagiarism. Assignments are to be submitted on time, and we've given you this in week 2, this brief, so you have enough time to have completed it by when it is due to submit. All assessments must be submitted on call campus. No late submissions will be accepted or marked, guys. Please remember that. Assessments must include a plagiarism declaration, and failure to do so will lead to a mark deduction of 10%. No plagiarism declaration in your document, automatically 10% gets deducted off your mark. That is as per the BMH, the Boston Media House policy. Make sure you follow the brief. Always use the computer spell checker to ensure the spelling and grammar are followed and they are correct. Okay, so we're very strict. The reason why is when you get into PR3, you need to have mastered this. And when you get into the working environment, even as an intern, right, you need to have all of these things covered and to do them well. Right, so under your make sure you have a table of contents. You will have things like your plagiarism declaration on there, indicating what page it is, page 1, question 1, etc. You put your page numbers to the right of, so you have plagiarism declaration. To the far right, you will have the page number, right? Question 1, to the far right, you will have the page number. Your reference page to the end will have the page number. So that when we look at the table of contents, we have an idea of what we can find on which page. Your plagiarism declaration must have a signature / ID number or initials, must be the full declaration as given out in the official briefing document. So in the official briefing document that I showed you just now, the Word document where I indicated the mark breakdown, you need to have a look at the full document that needs to be included in your assignment. Based on your reading of this article and other articles relating to the Galaxy K-Day, complete the questions below to restore and manage the reputation of Galaxy K-Day and welcome visitors back to this exciting event. The formative assessment must be completed individually. If anyone is caught working on the assignment together and they have similar answers or whatever the case may be, please go and read up on the policy, what will happen. List an example and provide examples of the various stakeholders and special interest groups who will affect and be affected by the Galaxy K Day event. Question 1, right? You need to write a small paragraph introducing, right, the answer to the question, right? So it's an introduction to the event and the situation that is currently in. Please include an introduction and then you go into answering the question. Now, your stakeholder or stakeholder groups, right? You need to look at internal and external, how they are affected by the situation, the actual researched example, customers, right? Remember, when you do your stakeholders, each stakeholder, right, needs to have the demographics unpacked for each one. Age, race, gender, income, geographical location, psychographic, okay? Stakeholder examples. Now, I'm just going to read through this. I'm not going to go in detail. Employees, right? You can see the breakdown there. Shareholders, if there are any in the organization. Customers, suppliers. Remember, for this event, there are going to be people who have put up the sound, a service provider, right? Competitors, right? Union members, trade unions, if they're applicable. Media, type, not channel, right? We don't want you to see that it's 94.7 or KFM or whatever. The type, print, online, broadcast. Remember, there's print, can speak to publication, newspapers. Online is online information that's published on online platforms. Broadcast is radio and TV. Then you can also talk about social media, right? When you get to your tactics in terms of a plan that you've got to do there in terms of the implementation. Regulators of the industry, right? Sponsors of the event, if there are any current sponsors. CSI partners or charities they support, government, industry associations. Now, please note for your assessment, these are not the stakeholders we want to see in your assignment. These are examples we are giving, right? They are not the stakeholders that you need to take, copy and paste and put in your assessment. They are examples. We are giving you examples of type of stakeholders. Please bear that in mind. It says your stakeholder examples. Don't forget to read the brief and read the article given in the brief. The brief clearly states that you must list, explain, and provide examples. There are 3 different elements to that brief. List, explain, and provide. It does not say that you must provide definitions or tell us what is a stakeholder. I don't need to know what a stakeholder, the definition of a stakeholder is, or the definition of what is public relations, things like that. We want to see you applying the theory, right, to the practical case study. Do not talk about what a customer is and a definition of a customer or employees. Rather talk about why the customer is important based on the article in the brief and give the demographic of the Galaxy K Day customers. The second aspect is draw up a strategy to effectively communicate with each one of the stakeholders and special interest groups identified under point 1. The strategy should include the specific PR tools aimed at specific stakeholders that would be used as part of the strategy. what you need to do there is you need to communicate the strategy. You need to the communication strategy needs to be created to communicate with stakeholders. The introduction is the importance of ongoing communication to ensure positive and mutually beneficial relations are maintained. You need to include an introductory paragraph to all of the sections. You need to do research. You need to build a relationship. You need to do public relations activities. Please look at chapter 4. Please read it. It will give you insight in terms of examples and what we are speaking to here. How do you plan to communicate with each stakeholder using the specific PR tools? Now, the PR tools is the type of media, right? So having researched all the media, we then devise a strategy to communicate with them based on their specific needs. This could mean initially setting up meetings or phone calls and sending a press release invites to the launch event, host them at Galaxy K Day or invite them to Galaxy K Day conferences, etc. Customers will be communicated through many initiatives, both PR and marketing teams, right? They will see adverts being placed in the media. They will be able to use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any social media, official social media pages, company website. They will also receive newsletters, flyers, text messages, as well as any PR coverage obtained. Now, the reason why I'm not delving into this into absolute detail, right, is because a recording has been done by Claire, the lecturer from Santon, taking you through the FA1 briefing. So please go look on Core Campus and access that and go through it. Then what we want you to understand, it's similar to what I said, is remember, this is not a theoretical assignment, meaning that we don't want you to provide us with theory, definitions. This is a strategy document, a live document that you're preparing for the company. There's no need for definitions and explanation as to what a public relations tools are. Go through all the stakeholders mentioned in question 1 and question 2. You are discussing the kind of messages they will need in order to welcome the Galaxy K Day guests after 2 years. What PR tools will you use to communicate with each of the stakeholder groups? For example, customers will see adverts, the company website, press releases on different platforms. Then, as part of your strategy, compile a detailed media list which includes at least 5 examples of any South African media. That could be magazines, newspapers, television, radio, websites, and you would pitch in order to gain coverage for the Galaxy K Day event. You need to ensure that you have 5 editorial angles, right? And you can then identify and make the link as to which angle you are going to use for which media, right? Then question 3, right? Media list. You can, magazines, you need to give at least 5 examples. Newspapers, at least 5 examples. Websites, right? 5 South African examples. Must include the URL or website address. Television, that includes radio stations, or if it's on, we need to know the name of the show, right? The time of the show, and what is the show's name like in terms of its on health and wellness or events, etc. And you don't need to give the journalist names or contact details, right? But make sure, I'm just going to read the, yeah, make sure you include all of the information that is required. Question 3, in terms of editorial angles, must be So you've got to look at lesson 10.5, understanding editorial angles, right? So you need 5 of them. You should be able to pitch each idea to the media on the list. The angle should not be specific to the media outlet. It should be roughly a short paragraph for each one, right? Reference page is Harvard referencing. Your PR1 and PR2 textbooks are going to be needed. Any other sources referred to or used need to be included in the reference. The article given in the brief will also be as part of the reference page. So you need to understand when you're given a case study, how is it referenced? The official website of the client will be included in the reference page. Media outlets included in your media list will also be included in the reference page, right? So we've given you the sources where we've taken the information from. Don't leave this assignment for the last minute. For those of you that are watching, the assignment is almost on your doorstep. Basically, you need to be finalizing and going through it and interrogating it, getting it ready for submission within the next week or so. And good luck. So basically, that is all that we have covered in terms of the second week. It's quite a lot that we've covered, and the expectation is that you need to actually go through to Core Campus, and you need to actually have a look at the material in terms of what is the expectation of what is required. I'm just trying to find here quickly. If I go to Core Campus, I just want to see if I can direct you on here, if it allows me to look at it. So the screen that you should be looking at now is where Core Campus is. You would only have one block. This is for PR3 old and new. When you click on this, right, you will come through here, and then if you go to assignments, right, so it's taking a bit of time to open up, just bear with me. Okay, under assignments, you will find the formative assessment FA1, right? Then when you go to modules, right, if you go down, you will see the Beginner's Guide to Plagiarism, Harvard Beginner's Guide here, how to access YouTube videos. Then you have week 1, right? So there's week 1 class recordings on there as well. And then you will see week 2. And then when you get to formative assessment 1 brief, when you click on this video, right, what I'm going to do is I'll probably have to stop sharing. What it comes up is it brings up the video of the PR2 FA1 recording here that has been done by Claire, as I've mentioned. And what you
Hi there, PR2s, and welcome to today's briefing class, where I'm going to go through in detail.
So that is the other resource that you need to take into consideration. It is available, right? It is available on Core Campus. So there's no excuse to say that there isn't a comprehensive briefing of formative assessment 1. So please go through it. Claire spent some time on it and she's done a detailed briefing. So I haven't done a detailed briefing on it because this is going to be a duplication. So this ends the briefing for week 2 for PR2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the lecture now, and then you will get the links. I will share the links with you, and then you can go through it at your own pace. But please bear in mind, for those who have missed weeks 1, 2, and 3, you need to go through this to actually just catch up in your own time. So I will see you